next guest is an award-winning journalist, author, and co-host of CNBC's Squawk Box. His book, 1929, Inside the Greatest Crash in Wall Street History and How It Shattered a Nation, is currently a #1 New York Times bestseller. Please welcome to the show my friend Andrew Ross Sorkin, everybody. I'm so happy to see you.
Thank you for having me.
I've been out with you. I've been lucky enough to be at dinner parties with you. And as a financial reporter, I've noticed in the time I'm with you that people want to ask you about financial advice. Does that happen everywhere you go?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are people satisfied with the answers you give them?
Never, because you go through an airport and they say NVIDIA, or they say Bitcoin, or gold, or silver, and I look at them and basically say, I wouldn't be at this airport if I knew the answer.
Right. Well, that's a good point. Yeah. If you're flying domestic, or I'm sorry, if you're flying commercial, yeah. They're like, this guy's not as smart as he seems on TV.
Just play one on TV.
But you also are not allowed to, as a financial reporter, you can't actually buy individual stocks.
True. So I've never actually bought and sold individual stocks at all. In fact, as a journalist, the whole point is that I can actually tell you whether such and such company is good or bad or whatever it is and feel independent. That's the whole idea. We have rules, both at CNBC, at the New York Times, about what we can do. These are rules, by the way, that our government officials, by the way, do not have, at least at this moment.
Well, it's fascinating, too, because, the other difference between you and the government is they are in meetings where they're actually hearing information earlier than
even
normal.
Yes, I like to think I'm early. They're really early.
They're really early. And not because they have good sources. They're literally just people are telling them information.
They are the sources.
They're the source. There's been a bipartisan effort, it should be noted, to try to put the same limitations on members of Congress as there are on journalists who cover these fields. Do you think there's any chance of it passing?
Look, people have been talking about trying to do this forever, and this is something that I think everybody would agree. Our congressmen should not be owning stocks after hearing. I mean, by the way, there are people. I don't know if you saw this. It's not just the stock market. Now there's these prediction markets, Polymarket, Kalshi. On Friday of just last week, with this whole situation in Venezuela, somebody made $400,000 literally betting, and clearly, I imagine, knew that something was about to happen this weekend. So yes, there is a bill on the table right now that would prevent Congress from doing this. Basically, everybody's prevented from doing this except for one person. Who do you think?
Is this DJT? Are those the initials?
He lives 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
I think
so. So he would be effectively off the table. I mean, he could still trade, do whatever.
Right,
Everybody else couldn't. But for years, people have been talking about trying to do this, and Congress and the Senate have never wanted to do this to themselves. I used to actually write columns. I remember talking to folks at the SEC, which regulates this industry. By the way, regulates insider trading.
Yeah.
CEOs, business leaders are not allowed to trade back and forth willy-nilly, especially when they know information. That's technically illegal. And when you go and you talk to the head of the SEC and say, why don't you regulate this? And why don't you put in some rules and regulations? They say, guess who funds us?
Yeah, there you go.
Congress.
Yeah.
So if you follow the money, you can understand everything.
Well, I would like to follow the oil for my next question. You mentioned Venezuela. And I think a lot of people have this assumption that maybe what happened this week is based on the fact that Venezuela is an oil-rich country. Yet, I think for somebody like a layman like myself, I think that you can just go in and it's very easy to get the oil. That is not the case in a country like Venezuela.
Look, I think that whatever we're hearing in terms of headlines out of the White House or otherwise saying this is going to be some kind of boondoggle for oil companies, they're all going to go in there, they're going to extract oil, they're going to create cheap oil for Americans. This is like a tens of billions of dollar project that would take literally years, potentially decades, way after President Trump is going to be in office. And
maybe.
So part of the issue is effectively whoever these oil companies are that may want to do this, even if they wanted to do this, and it's not even clear they would, because ultimately, by the way, there's going to be a price tag on all this. Oil companies actually don't want lower oil prices.
Yeah.
And so increasing the supply of oil, not always helpful. But I say that because the other piece of this is if this does take decades, and who knows what the politics of Venezuela are going to turn out to be, all that uncertainty means that most oil companies, especially CEOs of publicly traded companies, they don't want to go in there. They don't want their employees getting killed. They don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So this is just, I don't want to say it's a pipe dream, but I think it's a long ways out till we actually see something like that.
All right, well, I take the other side. I think he has a plan, and we're going to see results fast. Hey, congratulations. This book is fantastic.
Thank you.
It's not the first time that I've read one of your books that is about something that, I don't feel like I fully understand the economy or anything of that matter. You write it so that even somebody like me, it's just a thrilling read. And
thank you. It's trying. By the way, it's trying to be like you're trying to write like a novel. Like
yes, and it reads like a novel because I think sometimes we think these books. We think about a stock market crash. We think about, we do think about, the economy. We think about numbers, and really, it's about people.
Always.
And it's immediately introduced us to all these great real life characters. How soon, when you worked on this book, did you realize, I can write this like a novel. I can write this like a page turner, because it is a page turner.
So that's what I wanted to do. And the truth was, there have been some amazing books written about this period, but mostly by economists and people back even in the 50s. And it wasn't until I actually landed at a library and started opening up boxes and seeing transcripts that the secretary of a leading banker in New York had been keeping during his phone calls with Roosevelt and Hoover, that I thought, okay, you could really do this, because you could put people in the room so they could actually see what was really happening. I think we all have sort of a perception that something terrible happened in 1929. There was a stock market crash, and then the Great Depression happened. And that's so not what really happened. It's such a more intricate, crazy, it's a drama. It's a soap opera is what it is.
Yes, and people are very human in the same way that they're human now. I think, there's a lot of vanity involved in things like this. There's a lot of not wanting to admit how bad things are, because...
Always.
Yeah.
And so many of the characters are exactly like the people today. There's a character that's like Jamie Dimon, who runs JP Morgan today. There's a character like Elon Musk. There's a character that probably you think of as like a Sam Altman kind. So they're all, it's almost like history does repeat. And by the way, we had tariffs in 1932, so.
And how'd they go? No spoilers. No spoilers. No spoilers. Another thing, we talked about...
Global trade dropped by 60%. That's the answer.
One thing is, I believe Hoover is the one who basically tries to keep telling the Americans that things are actually better than they are perceiving it. This is...
time-tested by most presidents.
So, and again, like another bipartisan thing is we've, had back-to-back presidents, Donald Trump and also, President Biden, who told Americans, I know you think there's an affordability crisis, but there's actually not. And ultimately... Politicians are in a tough place when they're trying to tell Americans how much things cost.
You can't tell people how they're supposed to feel when they go to the supermarket. And I think we saw this, by the way, under Biden, as you said. I think we're seeing this under President Trump. Hoover was literally trying to put up billboards telling people, literally, if you just smile and feel good, things will be better. Now, there wasn't TikTok back then, but... people go to the supermarket today and you can see them. They're showing you the price of things, and they know how they feel. And things are, I hate to say, less affordable than we want them to be.
You got into this business as a young man. How old were you when you first started at the New York Times?
I was 18 years old.
So 18 years old,
yeah.
And how did you get assigned your first story?
So I was in high school.
Yeah.
I wasn't supposed to be there.
Okay.
I had actually talked my way into the building, sort of as a pseudo unofficial intern.
But nobody had hired you?
No. I was literally Xeroxing, stapling, and getting coffee for a reporter that I was a huge fan of. And I was almost just shadowing him.
Got it.
And then there was an editor who overheard me talk about this thing called the internet. This is back in 1995.
Yeah.
She thought I was like a real person. She thought I was like a college grad who was, capable of something. But she didn't know that I hadn't graduated from high school.
Right.
And she assigned me a 500-word story to write.
And is it true that your first story was about the sound modems make?
It was that. Do people even know what a modem is? My kids don't know what a modem is.
Yeah.
Do you remember that sort of mating noise?
Yeah, of course.
That
I mean, that's not how I thought of it, but...
Well, so she had said to me, what is that noise?
Yeah.
And I explained to her, I called it like a mating signal that the two modems, and she said, oh, that's great. You should go write that.
Gotcha.
And that's how I started my career.
When did she find out that she'd given the coffee kid an assignment?
like a week and a half later. Yeah. After it was in the paper, happily.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. And then your first byline, what was your first story with the byline?
First story with a byline was another esoteric question of the computer age: why aren't computers pink?
Okay.
Do you remember how they're always that beigey gray back then? Yeah. So that was that article. And you might appreciate this. So I go by Andrew Ross Sorkin. I don't know if people think it's maybe a little too much, the three-name pretentious thing, but the truth is that came from the first byline that I ever had, because that's my mother's maiden name, so you can steal my credit card now. And I had always gone by Andrew Sorkin. I still do. I think when I see you, I just say Andrew Sorkin. But I had.
And I'm always like, we met. Stop introducing yourself.
But I had lunch with my grandfather, my mother's father, the day before the article was published, and he said, Andrew, you got to use your full name in the paper. This is going to be like our first and last time it'll ever be there. So.
I mean, I will say Andrew Ross Sorkin is a guy. I mean, Andrew Sorkin, like, forget about it. But I'll read a book by Andrew Ross Sorkin. I mean, this guy knows what he's doing. The book's great.
Thank you.
I'm not surprised. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure.
What an honor.
Andrew Ross Sorkin, everybody. 1929 is